Good evening. Yeah, welcome. Fourth night, fourth day of the householder retreat. Oh, yeah. So we'll just get right into practice. Can you hear me okay on Zoom? Good? Okay, great. All right. So just take your time settling in. Mm. This is this really intentional sense of arriving here. And perhaps even just feeling the sense of community, the shared intention of coming together to practice the Dharma and to be in community. And this really beautiful shared intention of something within each of us wanting to wake up, wanting to heal. There's such a goodness and unifying quality within that. So we arrive, our body here, in chair or cushion or in whatever posture. We feel the ground, feel the body, feel the breath, feel the space. And then we just make ourselves available for whatever arises, loosening any expectations, or what meditation should look like, or what the mind should look like, or what the body should feel like. Just, just available to the moment. The whole body, the whole mind, the whole heart. And also a sense of aligning with what is true, what is inspiring, with what is inspiring. So the heart or an aspect of the Dharma, metta, compassion, the breath, insight. faith in the Buddha, refuge, some context around the practice that makes it more potent. Intention. And then we just rest. Those of you on Zoom, I'm ringing the bell. Thank you for your stillness and your quiet. I'll take a little break now, about 5 minutes, and we'll ring a bell when it's time to come back. Yeah. So we've been on quite the journey this week. These Buddhist fundamentals. It was funny. I was just thinking about how John and I decided to theme this week, and it was literally I texted John and said, "What do you think the theme should be?" And then John said, five elements of, or the five fundamentals of Dharma: impermanence, dukkha, non-self, Nibbana, and everyday awareness. And I was like, okay. That was the extent of the conversation. Yeah. And so we started with impermanence, or sometimes I like the word inconstancy because it kind of has this. It's just a different feel to it. And because things are impermanent and they're inherently unsatisfactory, no material will ultimately satisfy us. So that unsatisfactoriness is dukkha. That's what we call dukkha. And then because nothing is permanent, um, then how could there be a self, right? And so tonight, I've been given the task of talking about Nibbana, or you might know it as Nirvana, uh, which is something I've talked about, but has never been like a focus of a teaching that I've done, a full teaching. So this has been uh, really uh, rich to look into Nibbana and the different views on it and things like this. And it can seem like this very abstract concept that we don't really even think about that much. But Nibbana is really what the path is all about. It's the ending of suffering. It's a complete letting go. And so I often ask myself this question I continuously revisit this. Why do I practice? Why do I practice? And I think that's a really important question to ask. Um, I had one teacher I had a meeting with, and her first question to me was, do you want to achieve Nibbana? And I had been a practitioner for maybe 15 years at that time, and it was a question I never really thought about. Like that's the culmination of the path, it's like this thing. And I didn't know, you know. Um, but as upon reflection, that is something that I think is this incredible aspiration that keeps you going on the path. And so we have to ask ourselves another question too. Do we believe that awakening is achievable, or is that something that we can realize? And how we see ourselves in that question is really, really important. Uh, and it will affect every aspect of our practice and our life. Do we really believe that I can awaken, that we can awaken, that we can wake up, that we can come to the end of suffering, that we can reach Nibbana. And so that's a very interesting contemplation. There was another teacher I was listening to, Tim Olmsted. You know Tim Olmsted, yeah. And he was talking about this in reference to the Bodhisattva path, which is what inspired me to get on the Buddhist path. Which you take this vow of you vow to save all beings from suffering, and you defer enlightenment until all beings have achieved enlightenment before you. And he talked about it. This is, it's completely illogical, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to the relative mind or the limited mind. But if you really believe this, then it pulls you along the path. It pulls you along. And he used this example. He lives in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, which is where a lot of Olympic athletes train. And some very young, like 8, 10 years old, are training for the Olympics. And you think about this 8-year-old's aspiration of one day reaching the Olympics and maybe even winning a medal. And so it's that dream, it's that aspiration that seems so unlikely to most people around this kid, their everyday person. And it's such a rarity, a rare thing. But to them, they truly believe it. And this is what helps them to really achieve these really incredible things. And so I encourage you to reflect on this. And I like to even just begin my day. May I achieve enlightenment um, for the awakening of all beings. May I achieve enlightenment for the awakening of all beings. And this is the aspiration. And once I put that all beings in there, that it's not about this getting enlightened, it's about this waking up of the world, of humanity, of the collective, then that's really pulls me. I wake up in the morning, I don't feel like sitting, or I don't want to chant, and it becomes all about me not wanting to do this thing. And then that aspiration comes in. It's like, oh, I get on the cushion and I overcome this thing that's holding me back, and that puts me on my cushion. And even if it's the most miserable sit I've ever had, at the end I can feel like that's another step. And so I think that's really, really important. One of my inspirations in this talk is, and the way I'm talking about this right now, it seems like this thing you achieve, but really it's all right here already. And one of my inspirations over the years has been Ajahn Buddhadasa, who's a Thai forest, who was a Thai forest monk, teacher, just a kind of a giant in the Thai Buddhist tradition. He's pretty incredible. But he took a very untraditional route into becoming a teacher. He shunned the politics of the Buddhism in Thailand and just went off and did his own thing. And he's very, very revered for that. And because he did his own thing, he's got this very unique way of communicating the Dharma, and some to the conventional people, it's a very controversial view. But he's a very, very, very interesting guy. And so I'll be using a lot of what he taught here. He's got this really amazing essay called Nibbana for Everyone, which I really like. So just the word itself, Nibbana, again, Nirvana is the Sanskrit, Nibbana is the Pali. It's made up of two parts, this ni, meaning out or away, and then vana, from the root va, meaning to blow, as in the blowing of the wind. And so together, Nibbana literally means blowing out, to blow out, like a candle that's been blown out, or you we turn off the lights at the end of the night. The lights have been nibbana'd. They've been blown out. They've been turned off. And so, in terms of Nibbana, the question is naturally what gets blown out, and and really, when we look at the Four Noble Truths, it's the second noble truth that gets blown out: the tanha, the thirst, the craving, the selfing aspect of us, who's always craving the solidity within itself. And this has sort of been a theme this whole week, because this is at the very center of the Buddhist teaching, is that this tanha, this thirst, this desire for uh, an everlasting, concretized self, is the root of all of our suffering. So craving, grasping, clinging, the greed, the fire of greed that's always wanting more, the fire of aversion that's always pushing away. So we identify with things, but we also identify with aversion to things. Like, I'm against that, and that makes me a separate self, and that solidifies an identity, or I identify with something. The fire of delusion misunderstands who we really are and the nature of our reality. And when these fires are extinguished, the mind becomes cool. It becomes calm. It becomes free. Ajahn Buddhadasa defined Nibbana as the coolness that comes when the fires of craving no longer burn. And he reminded us, Nibbana is the reality of non-clinging. Whenever there is no clinging, no attachment, right there is a taste of Nibbana. The Buddha described this freedom not as annihilation, because it kind of sounds like annihilation, like the blowing out is just eliminated. Um, but it's not an annihilation. It's what we would call the unconditioned or the unfabricated. It's a peace that's not created by anything. It's the nature of who we are, and so it can't be destroyed by anything. In the Dhammapada, it says Nibbana is the highest happiness. I actually just printed this out on the break. I remembered I'm not going to read all of these, but in the suttas, there's 33 kind of metaphors for Nibbana. And yeah, here's some of them. The stilling of all formations, the relinquishing of all attachments, the destruction of craving, the unconditioned, the uninclined, the truth, the beyond, the subtle, the very hard to see, the unaging, the stable, the deathless, the exquisite, bliss, solace, the unafflicted, the pure, non-attachment, the island, shelter, harbor, refuge, the ultimate. You go on and on and on and on. And in one part, in the Majjhima Nikaya, the Buddha says that Nibbana is the supreme noble truth, which has an undeceptive nature. And so the Four Noble Truths lead us to the ultimate noble truth of Nibbana. It's really beautiful. And this Nibbana, it's not some kind of far off place like a heaven or kind of a mystical realm. It's really a shift in perception. It's really how we see. It's a way of seeing the world. And this is where this teaching of there's no difference in samsara and nirvana. There's no difference. It's only a shift in perspective. It's not a different place. It's how we view the world. It's how we see the nature of truth, or the nature of who we are. its right view. And so there's no separation between samsara and nirvana. Though we talk about getting out of the wheel of samsara and moving beyond it, it's really not a separate thing. It's a 180 in perspective. Yeah. And so in that perspective of seeing life as nibbana, all things become sacred. All things become uh, 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 objects of enlightenment. They're all pointers to the nature of truth. They're all pointers to nibbana. And so when Buddhadasa talks about nibbana for everyone, he's saying that we all experience nibbana probably multiple times every day. Um, the difference between us and maybe a fully enlightened being is, in a fully enlightened being, it's sustained. It's kind of the context through which everything is seen. But we get glimpses of it all the time. So again, Buddhadasa said, Nibbana is the reality of non-clinging. And so when we let go and the mind is free of grasping, we taste something cool, something quiet, something true. That's not a metaphor. And we could even imagine it right now. Imagine uh, for a moment what it would feel like to be completely unburdened. If there were no problems, if there were no issues, if things were just the way they are, and we could find peace within that. And it's really worthwhile to do this, to contemplate Nibbana. And we could say turning the mind toward Nibbana or inclining the mind toward Nibbana. Because the more time we spend contemplating it, the more likely we are to see it. And so can we just imagine ourselves as a Buddha or as a completely unburdened being? Even if it's just for a few seconds, it's a really beautiful place to be. And maybe we don't see it all the time because we haven't inclined enough toward it, or maybe we don't even consider it or think that it's possible. And so how do we cultivate these conditions? Well, one is just what we just did, is believing it. I have uh, lots of confidence in the Buddha. This is one of the reasons we take refuge. And the Buddha was always asking us to 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 see what it's like to practice. Don't trust his words, don't trust scriptures, don't trust all of these things, but just practice and see what it's like for you. And if it doesn't work, that's fine. But I believe he knew it would work. And and from my experience, it works because I would definitely wouldn't be sitting here without coming across the Dharma, but I might not even be on this planet if I didn't encounter the Buddha Dharma. And so cultivating a kind of a confidence within what the Buddha taught. And the Buddha taught us that we all have the seeds of awakening within us. They're already here. It's already here. And the spiritual path that we're on, any true spiritual path, is all about shedding what's not needed, not gaining more knowledge, gaining more stuff, gaining more retreats, gaining more trainings, gaining all this stuff. It's really about shedding the burdens, getting at the true core of who we are. And so there's this constant letting go, little by little by little. We shed the burdens that are keeping us from this true realization of who we are. And so again, do we believe that? And when we believe that, we incline the mind towards it, and we start to recognize it arising all the time. And so the Buddha's recommendation for the cultivating the conditions of Nibbana was through the eightfold path. Um, and so these eight, I like to think of them as like eight interwoven qualities of mind and heart. I mean, the view. So the view was these first 3 nights of impermanence and how dukkha arises and the truth of not self, and the Four Noble Truths could fit into that as well. And then intention. What is my intention in practice? Is it just to get good in meditation? Is it, what is it all about? Right speech creates the conditions for peace in the mind and peace around us. Right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. All of these things. You could the word right, if that doesn't work for you, you can replace it with wise. Wise view, wise intention, wise speech, wise action. These are just ways to begin to cultivate the relative conditions so that awakening is much more possible. Yeah. And again, the path is not about acquiring something new, but uncovering a freedom that is always there. Uh, and I really love these terms that the Buddha used for the Dharma. Uh, these are some Pali terms, how he described the Dharma. And the word Dharma just means, in its oldest definition, it just means nature or the right way things are or the natural law. And he described the Dharma as sanditiko. It's here, it's now, it's always present. It can't leave. It's always here. It's always here. It's dependable. It's always here. And so if Nibbana is our true nature, then Nibbana is the most natural thing there is. Yeah, it is the Dharma. Another word is akaliko. It's timeless. It's not bound by time. Ehipassiko. It invites investigation. It invites testing. It's just like when the Buddha said to try these teachings on. The Buddha said, just as a goldsmith, you know, tests gold, so too test these teachings. Opanayiko, it leads inward toward the source. This is my favorite one. It leads inward to the source, not outward to the source. If it's leading outward, then that's not the Dharma. It's leading inward to the source, because the source is right here within us, in this heart, right here. It leads inward to the source. And then, this is kind of a long one, but pachatam veditabo vinuhiti is to be experienced individually. We have to find it for ourselves. Nobody will do it for us. Teachers can point the way, the Buddha can point the way, the suttas can point the way. We get inspired in many ways, but ultimately it's us who has to walk through that door. And that's what the Buddha called the doorway to the deathless. The doorway to the deathless. We have to walk through that door. As Thich Nhat Hanh said, the greatest miracle is to walk on the earth in peace. And that's an internal peace. Yeah. in peace. And so this means when the mind is no longer inflamed with craving and resistance, what remains is clarity, is peace, is nibbana. And sometimes the word emptiness is associated with nibbana, this idea of shunyata or emptiness. Um, and Buddhadasa was very clear, the true emptiness is not empty, but it's full of everything. It's full of everything. And so sometimes we hear the word emptiness and it can sound sort of nihilistic and it gets interpreted that way sometimes. But that's not what was being said at all. It means emptiness really truly means infinite possibility. There's infinite possibilities. We're not bound. And so in this emptiness, we find a spaciousness. It's not a void, uh, but a fullness without self-ownership. Love, compassion, and wisdom naturally arise in this space. So as we let go, that space is filled with our true nature. Yeah. And so Nibbana is not something we can get. It's not something we can grasp. Nibbana will flood in when we stop grasping. Yeah, it's ungraspable. Ajahn Chah said, Nibbana is beyond questions of is it or is it not. It's like this. And you'll often see this of these awakened teachers, the Buddha, really refusing to uh, be tricked into this kind of dualistic way of seeing things. And so the Buddha was famous for not answering philosophical questions like, is there a self? Is there not a self? You know, God or no God? You know, because to take any side would be, creating another self. Even if you don't believe in a self, that's still a self in a way. That's still a belief. And then if you do believe in a self, obviously that's a self. And so in between, that's where the non-dual lies. And so that's really what the middle way is. It's not not taking a position. It's not. It's not accepting the question, the premise of the question in the first place. Yeah. Um, the Buddha uh, referred to himself as the Tathagata, and this sort of speaks to the putting out of the flame. And so our material experience is sometimes broken down into the five aggregates. So form, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness. Through these five things, we experience everything. And so these things, as they come together in causes and conditions, create a sense of self. And so if you no longer identify with any of those conditions or any of those things, then the flame goes out, the fire goes out. There's no longer identification. And so the Buddha referred to himself as the Tathagata. And there's all this, not all this controversy, but there's some debate over uh, of what the word actually means. And I think the Buddha did this very intentionally because it could be, and I think I'm getting this right, tata gata, which means thus come, or tat agata, which means thus gone. So it's both. So I think he intentionally did this to like not confuse people, but to just say like, I'm neither coming nor going because I'm not identified with anything anymore. And in that space, he could be what he had to be to whoever he was with. And so when you read through the sutras, he's always teaching in different ways, same message, speaking in different ways. Uh, if he's speaking to warriors, he's using warrior metaphor. If he's speaking to, devas, he's using deva language. He's always changing, adapting to the situation, and it's because of that emptiness or that fullness or that endless potentiality that he's able to do that because there's no clinging there, there's no positionality, and when that's not there, he can just communicate the Dharma in whatever way is most necessary. Uh, that's why I really love that, Tathagata. And so, what happens to the world when there's no more self-making, no I at the center of everything? Yeah, that'd be really nice, huh? That's when we can finally see clearly. Nagarjuna wrote, "When all dharmas are empty, there is no birth, no death, no defilement, no purity, no increase, no decrease." And this again is not nihilism. It's wonder. It's living the question. It's living without expectation or demand for a particular thing. It's experiencing life as it arises. Yeah. It's seeing the world as luminous, as interdependent, as sacred, as free. In Zen, they often talk about the great death. And this isn't the physical death, it's the death of the separate self. And that's followed by the great life. So you die before you live. I mentioned this poem a few weeks ago, but Ryokan is one of my favorites. He's just an incredible being. He wrote these simple these poems, and the story is he had very few possessions, just like most monks. He had a robe that was tattered, and he had a bowl, and he lived in this hut, and he had a few things, and he came home one night, and his hut was cleared out. Somebody had robbed him, of like the little food that he had or whatever he had. And he wrote this little thing. It says, the thief left it behind, the moon at my window," uh, which is an expression of awakening. The moon is in Zen is often associated with awakening. And so in the end, when we awaken or realize Nibbana, the only thing left, like if you think of this, how I describe the Buddha, only thing left is that moon at the window, that luminosity that can't be extinguished. Yeah. So a little review. So what have we touched on? Not a thing, not a thing. Nibbana's not a thing, but a possibility. Not a doctrine, but a doorway. A doorway. Yeah, the end of suffering, the peace that comes from letting go, the freedom of a heart that no longer clings. And the most important thing is the truth that this freedom can be known. Right here, it can be known in this life. And it gives me great confidence that uh, the Buddha believed this, us, all of us, uh, which gives me which gives me more faith and confidence that it is there. And then we get little glimpses of it here and there. And so inclining the mind towards that. So let's just pause for a moment here together. You might gently sense into any place in your experience where there's been a letting go, or an experience in your life where unburdening happened and how that felt. Even something really simple. That taste of peace, that coolness, openness. This is Rilke. Says, I am circling around God, around the ancient tower, and I have been circling for 1,000 years, and I still don't know if I am a falcon or a storm or a great song. Thank you for your attention and for just showing up tonight. It means a lot, and it feels good to practice together. Okay, so we have some time for discussion or questions or insights or just sharing, whatever you'd like. Uh, yeah.
Thank you, Adam. This is Paul. I'm in the hall. So
All in all.
if you have a question, just raise your hand here. And if you're on Zoom, just raise your virtual hand. And please hold the mic closely and say your name before you speak.
Hi, I'm Marie.
Hi.
I want to first thank you because I find words or certain words, delivery, intention is almost a coolness of itself. Like there's almost a coolness felt with that. I felt at times, like just a soothing or comfort, an acknowledgement, especially when pointing towards a source and that it's within, it's not achieving. Or in the beginning, when you ask the question, um, I almost, and I'm going to say it this way because this is how it kind of came up for me. Am I worthy to awaken? Because this is where I always am fascinated with um, the spiritual practice itself, but then also the psychology of if I can say of humanity, or maybe just the Western culture conditioning. Because I know there's been discussions about like some cultures, or I think it was Dalai Lama was confused when a bunch of psychologists asked him about what about self-degradation that the humans tend to do. So I don't know if this is so much a question. It's just it's a great question to ask. Can I awaken for the benefit of all? I can see that benefit, but boy, how much of an obstacle of self-worthiness is in there. I almost feel like, there's a question of that in there too.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Yeah, for me as well. And that's why we ask that question, because that it draws out those things to look at. Um, and I think this is where Sangha is really important too, because and relationships and people seeing you as worthy and believing that is important. And the refuges are really important for me as well. Like just knowing that the Buddha believed that I could awaken is a huge one, and that the worthiness part is just kind of a lie, because why are other people worthy and I'm not? It doesn't make any sense. And so we can begin to ask ourselves those questions and undo it a bit. But sometimes it takes uh, some real deep, difficult work to really look at the roots of that and untangling those roots. And sometimes it uh, working with someone, to help with that is very important. But just identifying it is like the biggest part. And again, that's why we need to, how do I ask that question? How do I see myself on this path? Do I really believe that? And now that you know that, you can probably see how it does affect your practice, or how it does affect particular things, or your experience in the moment when you're sitting there. Uh, so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We have Nicholas on Zoom.
Hello, Adam. Greetings, everyone. Thank you very much, Adam, for this deep dive tonight. And I have a question. I don't know how to formulate it, but I'm sitting with it for many years. What I want to point out is in relation to this cessation, or how you called it today, blowing out. The fire. In my case, what would help, or what would be a sign of cessation, would be the stopping of the thoughts, of the talking in my head. So when that happens, then I know there's something, some blessing is at work. And what I want to ask you is, in your experience and understanding, what is the role of intellectual polishing, the intellect here, because it doesn't seem to be about accumulating, like you said, more knowledge. It seems to me is more about the quality of the mind being polished to a level to do what both John and you are talking about, dropping into the heart, basically, for the mind to be smart enough to understand the value of serving the heart and strong enough to do this dive, to drop into the heart and come to that peace that you are talking. And what I want to say is that in my experience, the most inspirational texts are by people just like you came tonight with Rilke, or Shakespeare, or if I take a Buddhist example, I have here Dogen, who says things that are mind-boggling, like each moment is all being, is the entire world, and he, encourages us to fully penetrate entire time as entire being. How can being be time, and how can time be being? So things like that. So this is my question to myself, and also to you in your experience. What can be done to polish this mind and to avoid to fall into the trap of mediocrity, of only repeating platitudes, that other people said, and come to a place where the mind can drop and experience the world in such a way that it describes it in ways along those lines, like Rilke, like Dogen, like the Buddha, like whoever, instead of just repeating conventions that don't mean anything, like be present the moment, whatever, things like that. So I'm sitting with this question for many years, and I would be very grateful if you think there's any value in it. Otherwise.
Well, let me give you the answer.
Great.
Yeah, I think somebody like, Dogen, who probably spent more hours sitting in silence than anything. He was a practitioner first. Um, and I think there is a lot of value to polishing the intellect, but it's only a value if it leads you beyond the intellect. And so the beauty of Rilke's poetry, um, the you know the geniuses that have given us so many gifts and art and things. It's so beautiful because it takes us out of our own ego and takes us to somewhere beyond. Somehow people can use words or painting or whatever to take us out of our own limited self. And so I think that's really important. And the fifth aggregate is consciousness. Some people translate that rather than consciousness as cognition, which is thinking. So it's not about getting rid of. So putting the fire out isn't about getting rid of. It's just that you're no longer identifying with it. So you can still think and you can still polish the intellect and gain knowledge. But as soon as you think that will get you to the place where you need to go ultimately, then it becomes a hindrance or a blockage. Um, yeah. I feel like that's all I can say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what I meant. Not intellect for the sake of being self-referential, more the intellect being
Mm.
polished to become clear-minded, so to say, enough to understand the value of transcending itself, of dropping into the heart. But that basically it's a different path than mediocrity, than repeating platitudes, or repeating words without experiencing oneself, the world in ways that are indeed mind-boggling. So thank you
Yeah.
so much. That's exactly what I was asking about. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think there's also like Ajahn Chah said, the only book worth reading is the book of your heart. There's also this other way too, where it's not necessarily anti-intellectual. I think Ajahn Chah was a very knowledgeable person and knew a lot of Buddha Dharma, but he was saying, as far as being a monastic, everything you need is already right here. Um, and so I think there are different paths to it. But Yeah. Uh, if we can't see beyond the intellect, then then again it can become a hindrance. So yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
that question. We're kind of at the time now, so we're going to be go over. So sorry, I tend to go late, but I'm going to do some metta and merit, and then we'll have a couple announcements, I think. Just pausing here and feeling into just the joy, mudita, of gathering together for a shared intention, as I mentioned in the beginning. We're all here because we want something that's bigger than this limited self. We want to realize more fully interdependence. We want to expand our heart and deepen into wisdom. And that's a really, really beautiful and rare thing on this planet right now. So cultivating this peaceful heart, this wise heart, this open heart is not an easy thing, and it's countercultural in many ways, but it's the right thing. And it's the wisest thing we could do in this uh, in this suffering world. So this is no small thing that we're doing here. And for all the merit that we've accumulated here today and this week, we offer it to all beings, to the awakening of all beings. And may all beings realize that they too can awaken to the truth of who they are and to the truth of who we all are, which is infinitely interconnected and boundlessly loving. May all beings in all directions, without exception, be free from suffering and the conditions of suffering. And I just rang the bell. Thank you.